Welcome to Bitter Reality Brewing. This is the top 10 tips, tricks, recommendations, hacks, suggestions, awareness, whatever you want to call them. And oh my gosh, I've got props. 8 of these came to me last night that I've used, done, or been doing and just didn't even put them in my original list. So who knows, maybe we'll get to week 40, I don't know. Having a nice Sam Adams Rattler with some lemon, something on the light side. It's a little early in the day. Don't forget, go ahead, like, subscribe, keep sharing. Definitely appreciate the support. We're gonna jump right into this, and I spent like 4 days trying to figure out what was the best method for this. But number 1, hop spider cleaning. Yes, and I'm referring to this kind of hop spider because there are so many, and I will go into that. But this thing, I've had this thing for well over 3 years, and it was nasty, dark, brownish green. It was gross, and I clean it all the time, PBW, stick it in there where I'm cleaning. I just didn't give it any TLC. So after doing some tests with cleaning, and I'm gonna say they all kind of contributed, but one definitely stood out. PBW, dye-free Oxyclean, and something I know some of you are gonna go, what? Yeah, I've never used Barkeeper's Friend. I've used all these others and many others, but never used Barkeeper's Friend. I do feel the PBW softened things, kind of broke it down a little bit. Oxyclean may have helped a little, I don't know, but the Barkeeper's Friend made this thing look amazing. It's not as pretty as I've seen some people do, telling me all they used was PBW, but amazing. It did require taking a rag and wiping it down because there's like little particulates that get stuck inside the filter, and you can still see some that aren't gonna show up easily on the camera. But yeah, when you go to clean your hop spider, 150 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe a little hotter if you can get it. And PBW, Oxyclean, or personally from now on, I'll probably be using Barkeeper's Friend for that, and I may be testing it for some other things too. Keeping with the hop spiders. Number 2, hop spider extension. I was getting ready to do a 2.5 gallon batch, and I was afraid that this wasn't going to reach down, because as you can see, my 2.5 gallon would be right about here, which I saw somebody do all kinds of crazy adjustments with metal wire and hooking and screws and bolts, and I was like, yeah, there's gotta be an easier way. So I'm gonna tell you an easier way. 2, 1, if you have one of these little landscaping, they look like staples, just a little metal plug thing, you can get them Home Depot, Lowe's. I think you have to buy them in quantities though. So if you already have them, great. If you don't, I'll tell you a cheaper way. But what I did is I just grabbed this when I was doing the 2.5 gallon, knowing that I was gonna put more hops and it was gonna be sitting above the edge of the liquid, and I took a pair of pliers and I bent it. So then my hop spider dropped another almost good solid 3.5 inches down and was sitting submerged in the liquid, all good to go. A little easier for you though if you don't have one of those, because I know most of you don't want to go buy a big bag of these unless you're doing a lot of landscaping and need it, maybe to hold down some of that paperish stuff, that black stuff they put out there to kind of cover up and protect the soil. Wire, just heavy gauge wire. You can easily take this heavy gauge wire, reach up like this, bend a little bit of it, boom. Make sure it's heavy gauge, you don't want it to give way. Hook your thing in like this, boom. It's gonna lower it, it's gonna touch the inside edge. So you're gonna be 4 or 5, you can adjust it. That way you're gonna take this hop spider and be able to lower it down for small batches. When you really need to get it down there and you wanna make sure that it's submerged and that those hops are making good contact with that wort, it's one way. Number 3, hop spider options. And I know if you've been brewing for a while, you got this. But if you haven't and you're like, oh man, do I need a hop spider? Do I need a hop spider? No. If you have these from Brew in a Bag for your hops, or you can use an entire Brew in a Bag if you really want, not a crazy size one. You can put your hops in this, and I do this from time to time. And on these little latches that come on, like the Bruzilla and the Anvil and the Grainfather and all of them, I just simply drop it in there, pull a string over, wrap it around this a little bit, boom, done. Back in the day when I was doing propane in pots, this would just simply sit on a pot a little deeper than this one, like that. And the Brew in a Bag, hop bag, would go through like that, and you can open it up and just drop your hops in there. You have to shake it and kind of poke them down in there. But that was my hop spider. So there's many different options for a hop spider. You can make your own. You can buy one of these. These are not the cheapest thing. I think they're like normally 32. They go on sale for about 25 to 26. I grabbed one when it was on sale. You know me, I'm not gonna spend full retail if I know it goes on sale, since I kind of watch that quite regularly. But there's different options for the hop spiders. Number 4, pre-measuring carboy. And I've had some people look at me like I'm crazy, and then I have other people go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I get it. Well, part of it's out of being lazy. Yes, lazy. We don't all like to just work and work and work. And you can call it working smarter instead of harder, which really it is. I have this one plastic carboy that I love because what do? I pre-measured it at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 gallons using room temperature water, probably around 72 Fahrenheit, if I remember right, guesstimating. And I marked it, put the water in at another 128, measured. Don't do it from the gallon jugs. Those things are off. Measure it with a measuring cup. Verify you're putting in exactly 128 ounces each time until you get to that. For everybody not in the US, I'm sorry, but if you're doing liters, you can do the same thing. You get it. It's not rocket science. But I accomplish a lot more by having a pre-measured carboy because I get a bonus out of it. When I take this and I go, oh, hey, you know, I was just a hair under. I can add a little more water, bring it up to 5 gallons. If it's a little over, I can try to guesstimate and say, okay, well, that looks like about 5 1/4. So yeah, my gravity or my brewhouse efficiency wasn't really that far off because actually I ended up grabbing more wort, which lowered my overall efficiency numbers. And I can figure out what my real efficiencies probably are pretty close. But what I do is I take this, I put it into another carboy, and as I dump this out into it, I'm aerating the wort. Other catch, and I think I've already mentioned this before, and cleaning out some of that excess garbage that gets in your wort and all that little bits of particulates, we'll call it. The filter's in here. So that's gonna catch a lot of that crap and I can get it out of my wort. So when my beer is actually fermenting, it's beer. I don't have any other particulates in there, a bug, whatever may have flown into your wort. You never know. Yeah, I've had that happen. I think all of us have if we've been brewing outside before. Number 5. Now, number 5 is gonna go to some of you. It's okay. Think about it, it'll start to make sense. Thermal expansion. Yes, thermal expansion. What that means is that when I add 1 gallon of water to this pot at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and I bring it up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, it's gonna be closer to 1.1 gallon. It's not going to be 1 gallon anymore. It's going to expand. So when it cools back down, it's going to recede. So if I know that I have 1 gallon at 212, I'm actually gonna have less than 1 gallon at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Same thing with 5 gallons. And there are equations out there. I can put some calculators, you can play with them, try to figure them out, and some other information that tells you what to multiply it by, because the information that is in some of the calculators isn't correct from what I've seen on the other sites, and those sites seem to reference each other too, so they seem to be on the same page. But the same thing with 5 gallons. 5 gallons at 68 degrees Fahrenheit goes up to 212. It's closer to 5.15, 5.12, somewhere in that neighborhood. And at the same time, if you're at 5 gallons at 212 Fahrenheit and you cool it to 68 Fahrenheit, you're gonna be closer to 4.85, which if you're trying to get 5 gallons, you're gonna be below your mark. That's all. Number 5 is more about awareness and trying to learn. And like I said, I'll put links down in the description to those where you can find that information and those calculators so you can try to guesstimate. One day I was very concerned with the amount of beer I was gonna pull. So that's what I did. I ran in, put it in the calculator, realized where I was and said, okay, yep, okay, I'll be good. Here's what I need to do to adjust for it. It's just things you need to be aware of. I would rather have a little extra boil off than not enough. That way I know I can always top it off with a little bit more water. Most of my brewing salts are still gonna be in there. It's all good. Versus a thinner beer that everything's gonna be a little lighter than what I was shooting for. Talking about thermal expansion, we're gonna go across a couple more topics that are kind of related. Number 6, and I used to do this all the time, and I've seen a few other people recently that do it too, and I don't know how common it is out there, but if it's not that common, hopefully some brewers out there will hear what I'm saying and go, oh, great, thanks for the suggestion. Number 6, stick measuring. And you're going, You can use your mash paddle if you really want to, not a big deal. Or, and I usually have much bigger ones than this, but this one's very small, and it actually still has some of my old markings from like 4 or 5 years ago. What I'm talking about stick measuring is that if you have 1 gallon of water in here at a certain temperature, you stick the stick in, you pull it out, you'll see where it's wet and where it's dry. You then take a Sharpie and you mark it. And once you mark it, you know every time you do that brew, there's your 1 gallon mark. Same thing, and you could do it on one side for 212 Fahrenheit, another side for 68 or 72, whatever your water is when you first put it in. And you can stick it into your brew system or your kettle or whatever it may be and mark it 1, 2, 4, 5, whatever you want to mark. You can mark only your 5 gallon, you can mark at different measurements. And on one side you can have your cold, on the other side you can have your hot. And that way you know, hey, okay, that's what it is at hot, then I'll be good on my cold. Or, you know, hey, I've boiled off too much. I know it sounds really dumb, but stick measuring can save you a lot of time, a lot of headaches, especially when you're doing small batch brewing out of home pots and home kettles, things like that don't have any markings in them, which leads us into number 7. Yes, you want to put markings on these things? You can. Look up on brewyourOwn.com, etch your kettle. So number 7 is etching metal pots. You can actually use a 9-volt battery, some lemon juice, vinegar, and a couple of wires and I think a Q-tip. And you can mark these. So you can put little etchings so that when you're sitting there with your water, you fill it up, you go, yep, there's my 1 gallon mark, or my 2 gallon, or my 5 gallon, or whatever it may be. It's a very simple do-it-yourself. I have not personally done it, but there's been enough videos, enough things out there showing how to do this. So my assumption is it works. So your mileage may vary, YMMV. Number 8, and this one drives me nuts and will probably lead me into doing more all-rounders and largemouth carboys. Cleaning the inside of carboys with narrow openings. So number 8, cleaning the inside of carboys with narrow openings. You need one of 3 things, if not all 3. When you're getting into a carboy, like this bad boy, big, tall, got water spots inside, drives me nuts, but it's very hard to get it clean. I have a couple tools. I have, of course, this, which I shove down in there like this, and I try to get as much as I can, and yeah, I PBW it, I star sand it. It only gets so much. So I went to this a couple years ago, and I actually like it. I won't say it's perfect, but it does a good job. As it starts to spin, these fan out, and what they do is they touch the edges to kind of wipe away anything that the just regular hot water splashing around is not going to get off. It just touches it. And you put it on the end of a drill. That's why I have the prop for a drill. And this stopper isn't really necessary, but I like it for 2 reasons. 1, kind of helps keep this steady, and number 2, it keeps the metal from banging into the edges of your carboy. And if it's glass, you don't want to chip it, which that can happen. Number 3, metal rod with rags. This is a do-it-yourself, and maybe I'll do a video on it sometime. I made this myself, and I'll kind of show you the little spikes. You can see those? And you have to have a locking washer on the top. But I simply bought these rags off Amazon for next to nothing. They were super cheap. I take a rag, I cut a little hole in the middle, I put the rag over it, and these little teeth hold it in place when it's spinning. So the rag goes out kind of like spinning a pizza. Yeah, I'm not very good at spinning pizza either. But I can go up and down, and this rag is hitting all the sides, cleaning it. And I can either wash it, dry it, keep it, reuse it, or just throw it away, and I've got stacks. I've got stacks of them, and I'm dropping everything, but it is what it is. It's just a really easy way to get in there and clean, and I did that for a while before I bought this, because I just felt I could do a better job. Well, they both have their pros and cons. Number 9, no watch when brewing. Yeah, I have to point at my wrist because I know some of you probably have never owned a watch. Not calling you young, just saying. If you don't have a watch for brewing, which I did until I went to Jamaica and it was waterproof, but it didn't like that salt water down there. I know what you're thinking. Oh, I have a cell phone. I can use my cell phone. Yeah. How many of you pay attention to your cell phone? Or while you're brewing, you're sitting there playing games or you're texting. You're doing it for any and everything you can with your phone, but watching the time. Consider buying either a cheap timer, like called an egg timer, or, and this one's really easy for a lot of you who brew in the house or brew like in your garage, ask Alexa or Google to set a timer for you for your hop additions, sparging, heating, boil timers, whatever kind of timers you have. Say, hey, I'm gonna say Google because I have the other one and she'll answer. Say, hey Google, set a timer for 60 minutes. And you don't have to worry about it. Google will remind you, hey, it's time to go drop it. And you may want to, shave a couple minutes off. That way you know that when it tells you, you still got about 2 minutes to walk over to wherever you're going. Number 10, and I know I'm gonna get some flack on this one, but I'm sorry. If you've been watching me brew, I've done this a long time ago. Consider ditching strike temps. With, yes, I have a little prerequisite, with more modern electric brewing systems. Strike temps have been around forever, especially with propane or even older high density systems that were either 100% heat or zero. 100% or zero, they were all or nothing. Those, if you're using systems like that, the cooler, stuff like that, strike temps make perfect sense. If you've got propane, definitely, you need your strike temps. You got your hot water and you're gonna dump it down into the system and it's gonna recirculate. Yeah, keep with your strike temps. But if you're using something like an Anvil, a Brewzilla, something like that, you'll watch me, I'll have it at 100%, I'll have it at a certain temperature, and I'm adding my grains, and that temperature is still going up and down, sometimes spiking. Yeah, the only reason you would probably need a good higher strike temp on one of these systems is if you don't care about dough balls and you like to risk it, and you just dump all your grains in and stir and hope it's good. Yeah, you're gonna watch your temperature crash for just, what, 3 to 5 degrees for maybe a couple minutes. But with these newer low density systems and the ability to control how much power output, they're really good at regulating the temperature, especially if you're adding the grains like you're supposed to in a nice, even, slow amount, and just keep stirring as you're doing it. By the time you're done, you've seen in many of my videos, my temps are either a degree or two below, or most of the time, they're 2 or 3 degrees above, which just kills me. So yeah, the last thing I need to do is spike my temperature, because then I would be way, way up there. I know it was a lot to cover, and I had tons of props. Hopefully that helped. But thanks again. Definitely appreciate your support. Don't forget, like, subscribe, keep sharing. Definitely appreciate it. Thank you again.